Welcome, Park Cubs!
Today is Wednesday, October 21st, 2015.
We start today by celebrating today's birthdays as well as those from Monday and Tuesdays.
Today for lunch, in addition to the usual items, we have cheesy ravioli with marinara sauce.
Capellini, fettuccine, fettuccine, and linguine, manicotti, vermicelli, spaghetti and spaghetti, pepperoni, bocconcini, cannelloni, and rotini, rigatoni, ravioli, pasta, macaroni, capellini, fettuccine, and linguine, manicotti, vermicelli, spaghetti and spaghetti, pepperoni, bocconcini, cannelloni, and rotini, rigatoni, ravioli.
Mr. Osborne is sending in the order for our candy bar fundraiser today. If you have a form to turn in, do so today. Candy bars should be here in about 5 weeks.
Mrs. Renteria and Mrs. Falpel want to remind all students who have signed up for Cavalcade of Authors that the books are now available for checkout. You can still fill out the paperwork if you'd like to accept the 4-book challenge. Stop by the library.
Last week, Mr. Osborne went around and asked students who their trusted adult is. Here is 80 trusted adults in 120 seconds.
Mr. Osborne. Mr. Brooks. Jensen.
Miss Mac?
Miss Mann. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Gregory. Mrs. Mack. Oh, I know.
Me. Who's your trusted adult?
You, I guess. Mr. Otis. Mrs. Nolan. Mr. Otis. Mr. Otis, yeah.
Mr. Gregory.
Mr. Brooks for me. Mr. Brooks.
Mr. Osborne, Miss Espy, and Mr. Otis.
Your trusted
He's my
adult.
trusted adult. He's my homie too. My trusted adult, right? Everyone?
Mr. Osborne. Mr. Otis.
You. Mr. Brooks and Mr. Barney. Mrs. Kroll, Mrs. McClellan, and you?
Gary and
Mr. Otis. Mrs. Crow, Mrs. Osborne, and Mr. Osborne.
Mr. Otis. Mr. Brooks. Mr. Otis. Mrs. Cooper.
Mr. Osborne.
Miss Cooper. Oh, principal.
All of them?
Yeah. Mrs. Reyes. Mrs. Green. Miss Cooper.
You?
Miss Reyes.
Mr. Otis.
Mr. Weens.
Mrs. Weens.
Miss Green.
Miss Weens.
Mr. Pierce, 6th grade.
Mr. Brooks.
Miss Burt.
Mr.
Mrs. Reyes and Mr. Otis. Karen Dennis. Mrs. Reyes and Mr. Otis.
Miss Doherty.
Mr. Otis.
Miss Reyes.
Mr. Otis, because he's always there when you talk to him.
Everybody at the school.
Mr. Osborne. Mr. Aki. And Mrs. Reyes.
Mrs. Jensen.
Miss Bird.
Mrs. Stidler.
Mrs. Osborne.
Miss Weens and Mr. Lawson.
Mr. Zapone would like everyone to know that our first antisocial will be held tomorrow after school. It will be held in the 8th grade hallway. The cost to get in will be $3 and food will also be sold. The event will last until 4 p.m. The antisocial is held to help students that are going to the Washington, D.C. trip at the end of the year.
Today's videos at all previous Cub Reports are on YouTube and can be found online by going to That's it for today, Cubs.
I'm Tamlin.
And I'm Diego.
Have a great day, Park.
We gotta do much more than believe if we really wanna change things. We gotta do much more than believe if we wanna see the world